Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with me. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about how Roblox uses HashiCorp products, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Roblox directly as well. Hopefully you all will find something useful in this talk. What I really want you all to take away from it, though, is please don't make microphones make awful noise. I want you all to at least just try the things that I'm talking about. So for Roblox, try out Roblox, give it a shot. What are we discussing today? We're going to talk a little bit about me. I'm just going to introduce myself, talk a little bit about Roblox, and then I'm going to talk about kind of console, Nomad, and Vault specifically. So this is a nice follow-up to that Terraform talk. And I'm going to add in, so I work in security today, so I'm going to add in some like secure tips and tricks that relate to specifically to things that are kind of generic that Roblox does, that I think that everybody should do, that are specific to gaming industry stuff. So a little bit about me. This is my Roblox character. I think I look cool. I like it. I'm going to show you another thing that I have. So I'm an infrastructure security engineer at Roblox. I have my job title on LinkedIn as computer janitor because I think it's funny. Gaming is my main hobby. I started with Zelda on the NES, and depending on who you are in this room, that either makes me very old or very young. And so some fun facts that are kind of gaming and me is that League of Legends got me my first job in tech. And I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area because of CSGO. And I now work at Roblox because of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That is not a game fact, I just think it's funny. And my top game of all time is Outer Wilds, and the game I'm playing the most right now is Dota 2. Sorry if that upsets you or it makes me upset, but I still play it. And one more thing, my favorite game on Roblox today is a game called Bad Business. If you download and play Roblox, I think it's a really fun game. I would suggest everybody try it out. So what is Roblox, right? So our mission statement is that we reimagine the way that people come together, and we do that kind of at a pretty big scale. So this is some of the numbers that we have. I'm going to show you all a website later at the end, but lots of users, lots of engagement hours, lots of developers, and I want to show some kind of interesting experiences that people have built. So this is a kind of, if any of you have played Titanfall 2, somebody made like the time travel portion in an entire game. That's the entire game, and it's really cool and it has some really neat effects. This is someone did something really personal. They made a dream journal, and I thought that it's very interesting. It's a very cool mixed 2D, 3D environment. And it uses some of the coolest shaders that I've seen on Roblox. This is 3D, you move around. The entire thing is completely flat. So you jump and move around and it looks flat. I don't know how they did it. It's very cool. This also I want to show is something pretty funny. You can make very interesting looking characters. The spider legs actually move as you walk together. They are a pair of jeans. So we have a system called layered clothing, and what people figured out very quickly is that you can do really goofy stuff with it. So there's like a snake tail and spider legs, there's scorpion stuff, there's a lot of stuff with it. So one thing that I'm kind of proud of is that in 2023, we paid $740 million to developers. I really want that to be $1 billion, so I think that's like a cool big number. So if you all could make games on Roblox and make money for yourselves, so I can say that that's $1 billion, that would be great. So Roblox really kind of relies on HashiCorp. That's all I'm going to say about Roblox, by the way, for the most part. This really goes back to 2018. So Roblox was entirely Windows-based. We were looking for kind of modernizing the stack, like what are we going to do, what are we going to do? So we did a lot of stuff, and at the time in 2018, there were really a couple of choices. We wanted to go to orchestration, so there was like Kubernetes, there was Mesos, there was DCOS, there was Docker Swarm, and there was Nomad. We were mostly Windows-based still at the time, so Nomad, Console Vault, Terraform, Packer, et cetera, all run really well on Windows. So that was actually kind of the driving force behind choosing it, but ultimately it's ended up being a really nice thing to pay off. Before I even start talking about HashiCorp products, I want to talk a little bit about monitoring. Monitoring is probably the single most important thing that any of you can do for any reason, anywhere. It is unbelievably important. Because so specifically talking to gaming, you need to know what your players are doing, making sure they're not doing kind of any weird things. So today we use a combination of we either use CrashPad or Minidump. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not the actual developer. But don't. Another thing I want to say is don't skimp on securing this specifically. You have to make it public because your players are going to be playing on devices that you don't control. So you need to do a really good job there. For server metrics and all kinds of other random stuff, we use Prometheus. We started with Victoria metrics. It took us really far. If any of you are starting from scratch, you should just use Victoria metrics. Don't think about it. You can change something later. And we also use a lot of OS query for lots of things where metrics are a little hard to gather. Fleet DM is a really good product for that. It's what we use today for that. Really good security product, really good overall product. So I want to begin by kind of stating some questions and then state how we specifically answered them. So console it just answers all these questions, but one thing that we do is how do you discover microservices that are moving around hosts very quickly? How do you store configuration data that needs to be reloaded very quickly between applications and servers? How do you set up really reliable DNS for microservices and more? And how do you load balance across containers? And if you have, I think we have 800,000 health checks running in a couple clusters today. So if you need lots of health checks across lots of types, it does TCP, UDP, gRPC, HTTP, et cetera. So we specifically use console because we needed to allow Windows to talk to Linux containers. That was really how it started. And we also needed some dynamic configuration for some applications. So console solves that problem really, really well. We use console template basically everywhere. All applications use it for all kinds of different reasons. It's built into Nomad. There's a fork of it, which is Ruby-based, which sounds weird, but that's also really good too. That one's called Console Template RB for ERB templates. And one nice thing about console is that the agent-based architecture actually helped us a lot. You can do really cool things like set up really complicated caching layers between data centers, within data centers. If any of you run an edge data center for any reason, you can do caching several layers deep where you can lose a lot of systems and everything will stay up and running and functioning very well. So any of you in here, if you've never ran console before, how do you run it locally? How do you test it? That's it. So I think I've seen a lot of blog posts of just is a bad thing, but you just run that command. I don't think that's too high of a bar for anybody here. And it works on everything. So this is a MacBook. It works on that. It works on Windows. Works on Linux. Anything you want. Next up is Nomad. Nomad kind of has a special place in my heart. I've done a lot of terrible, awful things with it, and you should too. And it answers a lot of questions that I think are really kind of challenging and hard to deal with. So one thing that you can do with it is you can orchestrate any kind of workload. You can set up super complicated chains of things. So for instance, if you're building assets. So Epic Games gave a really good talk on this at HashiCorp. But if you're building assets and they have really complicated kind of startup, teardown dependencies, Nomad has a thing that's called a batch job, and you can do a pre-start, post-stop to really build that chain of dependencies, to build the asset, to ship it, to do all kinds of things. To if it fails, you can catch the failures, and you end up orchestrating things in a way that's really nice and scalable. And all of these things you can do in the you can send Nomad 1 million jobs in a second, and it'll be fine with that. So another thing that we do is we use it can deal with artifacts. Let me just move to the next. You can download artifacts. So if you have really good for ML workloads, if you have a 20 gigabyte or 100 gigabyte thing, you don't have to put it in a container. You just download it. Makes your life a little easier. So I have orchestrated IIS websites with Nomad, which if that means anything to any of you, I'm sorry. I've also done PowerShell with it, which is also equally not as fun. Mostly today we use it with Docker, but Roblox wrote a direct container D driver. It has like BSD drivers. It has all kinds of crazy drivers. Check them out. So there's a huge amount of knobs, which make it really scalable. So if you have one server, it works great. If you have 10,000 servers, it works great. We've tested the upper end of this. The largest cluster we had was like 35,000 servers. We've since brought that down, but it actually works fine. That was 5 Nomad servers doing 35,000 clients. It works great. So I would even suggest that if you have a single server, it still is pretty nice to use. And you don't, anyone at HashiCorp in this room, I'm sorry, but you don't actually have to run 3 or 5 servers. Like if you just have one server, it works great. I ran a 100 server cluster that way, it was fine. Yeah, it's the same thing here, and it also works on every operating system. There's one exception, which is that like Docker doesn't work great on Windows or Mac OS, but you can just run a bash script anyway using the exec driver just to test it out, and I think you should. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that has saved our ass, and will save your asses too, which is you should use setcomp. Setcomp is awful to use, it's not fun, and it's really hard. So any of you who run any kind of server or any game workloads, probably familiar with like AppArm or SE Linux. We have switched, so Roblox has this whole setcomp thing, but we actually looked at our code and we realized we basically recreated what Cosmos C did in making this command called pledge. You should use pledge. Everyone should use pledge. Nomad has a pledge driver that one of the people wrote, so you actually don't, it's really easy to use. And from some of the commits that I've been seeing, the new exec driver is going to have pledge built into it, which is really cool. And that really makes setcomp usable like for humans. Otherwise, you're doing like direct memory address verification allocations. It's not fun. So I want to talk about Vault. Vault is the thing that I've personally been working on the most on recently. And it answers a ton of questions. So just to go through these, this is like, how do you manage secrets? I think that's kind of a big general question, but then, how do you do a PKI? If you only want an API, how do you manage SSH, RDP, LDAP, OIDC users? How do you manage access to databases? How do you manage access to major clouds? How do you provide encryption to everything? And Vault answers all these questions. So we use version secrets today. We do a lot of stuff with the metadata stuff. We have a lot of internal APIs, so Vault is really the driver behind a lot of our internal APIs. And one thing that it's really helped us with is the PKI engine. So today we have everything running through mutual TLS, so nothing is plain text, which is amazing. And Vault really made that easy. There's a couple tips and tricks here, which is like, if you do it by default, you can only issue so many certificates and then your Vault cluster will blow up. There's a couple buttons you click to turn off something called leases. You yourself will have to find them because I don't know them off the top of my head. With that though, we do about 1 million certificates a second and it works fine. Also with Vault, we use SSH certificates. Roblox is the first place where I really truly implemented SSH certificates. They're really nice to use. No more key management. If like an employee goes rogue, there's always that situation of what do we do about the keys? Well, now you don't have to care. Who cares? They're using certificates. They're gone. So all of our database access goes through Vault. A lot of our cloud access goes through Vault. And we've also begun heavily using the transit engine. If you look at the transit engine, it doesn't scale that well itself. It has a thing called data keys. Should look that up. We use a lot of that. So it works really, really well. Again, how do you test run it? You do that. It, however, has one caveat, which is there's a version that doesn't have TLS and a version that does. I think you should use the one that does, but I'm not gonna, you don't have to, it doesn't matter. So back to SSH certificates though. I want to double down on this. You must use this. This isn't like, hey, I'm gonna run a server. How do I manage SSH? Use certificates, don't even think about it. The first time you set it up, it's so nice and you'll never use normal keys ever again. So again, we use Vault. We actually use Boundary as well, which is another HashiCorp product. We've just finished kind of rolling that out internally. So developers and engineers and folks don't even see Vault certificates anymore. There's a thing in Boundary. They go through Boundary. It does everything under the hood. It's really, really nice to use. And if you're already using something like Teleport or Small Step, those are good as well. Nice job. I still think you should use Vault, but if you have a thing, use it. And this is it, by the way. So like, if you think it's hard, that's it. So there's a little more to it for like production and stuff, but if you want to try it out, it's not hard. Last, I want to talk about something which I think that is really cool that Roblox did, that I've seen a growing trend of adoption kind of across the industry, which is that a lot of things try to implement scripting engines. You really want to give your players guardrails. If you don't, it's going to be bad. Some portion of your community is always going to want to customize your game or platform, and you should encourage them. Like you saw all that stuff at the beginning of my avatar and the cool avatar that I made and all those games. That was all player created. None of that was created by Roblox. So those are things that I saw it in the marketplace. I said, hey, this is cool. I'll buy it and put it on my character. So we have our scripting language that we wrote in-house called Luau. Luau is a fork of Lua 5.1. We tried really, really hard to upstream changes into Lua. Nobody will ever be able to upstream any changes into Lua. Don't even try. So you should use Luau, and if you want to upstream something, PRs are accepted. And we care a lot about security and performance. So if you want a scripting engine that's super performant, you don't have to care about security, Lua's pretty good. So this is my lizard Prince, by the way. I always like to put a pet on a slide. So I realize I've always put my cats, but not my lizard. So that's Prince. He's a crested gecko.